The envelope hit the doormat like a grenade, its crisp white edges slicing through the gray Seattle drizzle that pooled outside Nolan's apartment door. He tore it open with fingers that trembled not from the chill seeping through the floorboards, but from the single line scrawled inside, "You're not welcome at Caleb's wedding. Stay away for all our sakes." In that moment, the rain outside blurred into the sting of tears he refused to let fall, because Nolan Harper had learned long ago that family didn't just break your heart. They buried it under layers of polite lies and Sunday sermons. Nolan stared at the note until the words blurred, the ink from his mother's careful script bleeding slightly where a raindrop had snuck past the seal. It was classic Evelyn Harper, precise, unyielding, like the ranch house back in Bend, Oregon, where the Deschutes River carved its indifferent path through red rock canyons. She hadn't signed it, but she didn't need to. The scent of lavender sachets clung to the paper, a ghost of the linen closet where she'd hidden his old baseball glove after he came out at 17. As if erasing the evidence could rewrite the boy who'd once dreamed of pitching for the Mariners. He crumpled the note and tossed it toward the trash bin overflowing with takeout containers from the corner faux shop. It missed, fluttering to the floor like a defeated flag. Nolan's apartment in Capitol Hill was a third-floor walk-up in a brick building that creaked with the weight of too many stories. Queer kids from the suburbs, artists scraping by on gig apps, baristas with tattoos that told tales of rebellion. The walls were thin enough to hear the couple next door arguing in low Spanglish about whose turn it was to walk the dog, a rhythm that usually lulled him to sleep but tonight felt like mockery. At 28, Nolan had built a life here that felt solid, or at least patched together with enough duct tape to hold. He coded for a startup downtown, turning lines of Python into apps that connected people who otherwise might never cross paths. Ironic, given how his own paths had diverged so sharply from the one his family mapped out. Mornings started with black coffee from the French press's ex, Marcus, had left behind, and evenings ended with runs along the Burke-Gilman Trail, where the evergreen scent cut through the urban haze and reminded him that roots could grow anywhere, even in cracked concrete. But this was a gut punch from the past, yanking him back to high school summers when the air hummed with cicadas and the Harper boys, Caleb, Nolan, and their little sister Mia, chased fireflies across the back 40. Caleb, 2 years older, had always been the golden one. Quarterback, valedictorian. The son who stayed to run the family feed store after Dad's heart attack. Nolan? He'd been the dreamer, sketching comic strips in the margins of his algebra notebook, stealing glances at the boys' soccer team during PE. And then there was Ethan. Ethan Riley, with his easy grin and freckles that dusted his nose like cinnamon, had been Caleb's best friend since kindergarten mud pies. He lived 2 ranches over, in a clapboard house with a sagging porch swing where the 3 of them would pile after school, trading comic books and tall tales about escaping to Seattle for concerts at the Showbox. Ethan was the bridge between them, Nolan's confidant in the quiet moments when Caleb was off charming the town with his charisma. They'd share secrets under the stars, Ethan's voice dropping low as he confessed his fear of disappointing his own folks, strict Catholics who prayed over every meal like it was the Last Supper. Nolan leaned against the window now, watching headlights streak the wet streets below. A memory surfaced unbidden. That last summer before college, the night of the county fair. Cotton candy air thick with fryer grease. The Ferris wheels creak against the night sky. Caleb had wandered off with a girl from the cheer squad, leaving Nolan and Ethan alone in the crowd. They'd ridden the thing twice, knees bumping in the tight car, Ethan's hand brushing Nolan's on the safety bar. What if we just kept going? Ethan had whispered as they crested the top, the world a glittering sprawl below. Up and away, no looking back. Nolan's heart had hammered, not from the height, but from the heat in Ethan's gaze, the unspoken pull that tasted like possibility. They'd kissed that night, clumsy and fervent behind the hay bales, fireflies winking like conspirators. It was Nolan's first soft lips tasting of root beer floats, Ethan's fingers tentative in his hair. But dawn brought shame's cold grip. Ethan pulled away first, mumbling about it being a mistake, a one-off born of teenage haze. Caleb would kill us, he'd said, eyes averted to the barn cats twining at their feet. Nolan had nodded, swallowing the ache, because losing the moment meant keeping the friendship, and Ethan was the one person who made Bend feel like home. Years passed in a blur of distance. Nolan fled to the University of Washington, majoring in computer science to build walls of code around his vulnerabilities. Coming out sophomore year had been a quiet revolution. Rainbow pins on his backpack, hookups in dorms that smelled of ramen and regret, a chosen family of drag queens and poli-sci majors who taught him that love wasn't a zero-sum game. Ethan stayed in Bend, taking over his dad's auto shop, dating the pastor's daughter, Sarah, in a courtship that unfolded like a church bulletin. Chaperone dates, engagement announced at the annual Harvest Festival. Caleb's wedding was to be the crown jewel, a big affair at the old Episcopal Church, white tents on the Harper lawn for the reception, barbecue ribs slow-cooked over mesquite. Nolan had gotten the save-the-date months ago, a glossy card with gold embossing that screamed money well spent. He'd planned to go, steeling himself for the awkward hugs and probing questions about his roommate in Seattle. But the note changed everything. It arrived 2 weeks before the date, postmarked from Bend, no return address. Evelyn's doing, no doubt, with Caleb's silent complicity. Dad was too buried in his recliner and Fox News reruns to intervene, and Mia, sweet, 16 now 24 Mia, was probably too scared to push back. Nolan's phone buzzed on the coffee table, shattering the silence. A text from his coworker, Lena, happy hour at the rendezvous? You look like you need a dive bar exorcism. He typed back a quick, rain check, then scrolled to his contacts, thumb hovering over Ethan's name. The last message was from Christmas. A photo of Ethan in a Santa hat, arms slung around Caleb, captioned brothers from another mister. Miss you, man. Nolan's chest tightened. What would he even say? Congrats on the ball and chain? Sorry my existence offends your future in-laws. Instead, he poured a glass of the cheap Merlot from the corner market and sank onto the couch, the springs groaning in sympathy. The TV flickered to life on some Netflix drama about fractured families in the Pacific Northwest. Rain-slicked streets, baristas with tragic backstories, lovers reuniting in coffee shops that smelled like heartbreak and hope. Nolan muted it, letting the visuals wash over him like the downpour outside. He thought of Ethan's wedding tux, starched and waiting in Bend, the way it'd hug his broad shoulders, the same shoulders Nolan had once leaned on during thunderstorms. Sleep came fitful, dreams tangled with fairground lights and church bells tolling accusations. Morning brought a hangover of unresolved grief, the kind that settled in your bones like Seattle's perpetual mist. Nolan dragged himself to work, coding bugs into submission at his desk overlooking Elliott Bay, where ferries cut white wakes through the fog. Lunch was a turkey sandwich from the food truck row, eaten alone on a bench where joggers pounded past, earbuds in, worlds insulated. By evening, the note's weight had festered into resolve. He wouldn't beg for a seat at the table that had pushed him away. Let them have their perfect day without the gay sun casting shadows. But as he laced up his running shoes, phone in hand for the post-run playlist, a call came through, unknown number, Oregon area code. Nolan's pulse spiked. He let it ring twice before answering, voice steady despite the storm inside. Nolan? It's Ethan. The words hung there, warm and ragged, like a hand extended across miles of bad decisions. I need to talk. About the wedding. About everything. Nolan's breath caught, the city noise fading to a distant hum. Ethan, what's going on? A pause, filled with the crackle of a bad connection or unspoken truths. I'm calling it off. The whole thing. And I need you. Can you meet me? I'm already on the road. The world tilted, rain pattering against the window like hesitant applause. Nolan closed his eyes, the hook of that old Ferris wheel kiss reeling him back in. Where are you? Pulling into Seattle by midnight. That diner off I-5. The one with the neon sign that says, open 24/7 for the weary. Remember. How could he forget? Their first stop on Nolan's escape to college, burgers and black coffee at 3 a.m. Ethan pressing a mixtape into his hand like a talisman. Yeah, Nolan whispered, heart thundering. I remember. As the call ended, Nolan grabbed his keys, the crumpled note forgotten on the floor. The city lights beckoned through the glass, a labyrinth of second chances. Whatever storm Ethan was bringing, Nolan was ready to face it, not as the banished brother, but as the man who'd always known where his heart truly lay. The neon buzz of the diner's sign cut through the midnight fog like a beacon for lost souls, its pink glow reflecting off puddles that mirrored the sodium lamps along Aurora Avenue. Nolan pulled into the gravel lot at 11:57, his old Subaru's wipers slapping rhythmically against the relentless Seattle rain. The place was a relic, faded formica counters, vinyl booths cracked from decades of confessions, the air thick with grease and the faint tang of cigarette smoke from the days when you could light up indoors. A lone trucker hunched over pie at the counter, but otherwise, it was empty, save for the waitress named Dolly who refilled coffees with a maternal vigilance. Nolan claimed a booth by the window, the one with the best view of the highway's endless ribbon. His knee bounced under the table, a tic from law school interviews he'd never taken, nerves channeling into motion. He'd thrown on jeans and a flannel over his tee, the kind of Pacific Northwest armor that said, "I'm fine," even when the mirror lied. But inside, it was chaos. Flashes of Ethan's voice on the phone, rough with exhaustion. The unspoken plea that echoed their teenage whispers. Headlights swept the lot at 12:03. A battered Ford pickup, mud-splattered from Oregon backroads, pulling in with a gravel crunch. Ethan stepped out, taller than Nolan remembered, his frame filled out by years of wrenching engines and hauling hay. He wore a white dress shirt untucked over dark slacks, the groom's attire rumpled from hours on the road, tie discarded somewhere in the rearview. Rain slicked his auburn hair, curling it defiantly at the temples, and as he ducked through the door, shaking off water like a retriever, his eyes, storm gray and unwavering, locked on Nolan's. "Hey!" Ethan said, sliding into the booth opposite, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the tabletop. Up close, the freckles were still there, faded but faithful, framing a face etched with lines that spoke of sleepless decisions. "Hey yourself," Nolan replied, managing a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. Dolly materialized with 2 mugs of coffee, black as midnight, and menus neither would touch. "Rough drive." Ethan's laugh was short, bitter. "You could say that." Left Bend around dusk, after the rehearsal dinner toast where Caleb slapped me on the back and called me brother. Felt like a noose tightening. He wrapped his hands around the mug, knuckles whitening. "Sarah's devastated. Her folks are probably praying for my soul right now. And your family. God, Nolan, I'm sorry. About the note. About everything." Nolan's grip on his own mug tightened, steam rising like ghosts between them. The note was Mom's masterpiece. Dad probably nodded along from his lazy boy. Caleb? He could have said something. The words tasted sour, laced with the old resentment that family ties could twist into knots. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on the table, closing the distance. Caleb's scared of losing the store's biggest clients if word gets out about what happened back then. His gaze dropped to the coffee, swirling dark eddies. "But that's no excuse. I should have fought harder. For you." The us hung there, a bridge long burned but smoldering still. Nolan traced the rim of his mug, memories flooding in. Stolen afternoons in the Riley barn, hay bales as cushions, Ethan's hands mapping uncharted territories with a reverence that made Nolan feel seen, not sinful. They'd promised forever in whispers, but college and closets had other plans. Ethan dated Sarah freshman year of Nolan's absence, a safe harbor in Ben's judgmental waters. Now here he was adrift. "Tell me what happened," Nolan said finally, voice steady as the fairy horns echoing from the sound. "Why run? The wedding was tomorrow. Vows, cake, the whole heteronormative circus." Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his damp hair. "It hit me during the rehearsal. Standing at that altar, Sarah in her lace dress, your mom beaming like I'd hung the moon. Caleb's best man speech, joking about how we'd be brothers for real, raising kids on the ranch. And all I could see was you. That night at the fair. The way you looked at me like I was the only star worth chasing." His eyes lifted, raw and unguarded. "I can't marry her, Nolan. Not when every I do would be a lie. I drove straight here because you're the one I can't outrun. The confession landed like rain on parched earth, soaking through Nolan's defenses. He wanted to rage, at the years wasted, at the pain Sarah would carry, at the family rift widening like a fault line. But beneath it, a spark flickered. The boy who'd believed in up-and-away dreams. Dolly refilled their mugs without a word, her eyes twinkling with the wisdom of 1,000 midnight tales. Outside, traffic hummed, semis barreling north to Canada, south to Portland's hipster havens. Nolan sipped, the bitterness grounding him. What now? You can't just ghost a wedding. My brother's life implodes, and yours? You'll be the town pariah. Ethan nodded, shadows playing across his jaw. I called Sarah from a rest stop, told her the truth, about loving you, always have. She cried, but she's tough. Works at the library. Reads all those romance novels where the hero redeems himself. A ghost of a smile. She said to go find you. Fix what we broke. Nolan's throat tightened. Sarah? He'd met her once. At Christmas 3 years back. Her laugh bright as Ben's summer sun. She'd pulled him aside, whispered, Ethan talks about you in his sleep sometimes. He'd dismissed it as nostalgia. But now, they talked through the night, words tumbling like the downpour. Ethan's closeted years, the auto shop's grease under his nails a metaphor for stuck gears. Nolan's Seattle reinventions, from circuit parties in Pioneer Square to quiet dates with men who vanished like fog. Laughter crept in, tentative. Remembering the time Caleb caught them skinny dipping in the river, assuming it was boyish hijinks. Tears followed, hot and unashamed, for the boy Ethan had been, burying his heart to fit the mold. By 3 a.m., the diner emptied, Dolly flipping the sign to closed with a wink. You boys take the back booth. Storm's not letting up. They did, shoulders brushing in the dim light, the vinyl warm from shared heat. Ethan's hand found Nolan's across the table, calluses rough against smooth skin. A mechanic's promise. I don't know if I can go back, Ethan murmured, thumb tracing Nolan's knuckles. To bend. To pretending. Nolan turned his hand, lacing their fingers. Then don't. Stay here. We figure it out. Code and cars, coffee and chaos. Dawn crept in, gray light filtering through steamed windows, painting their faces in soft halos. Ethan leaned across, lips brushing Nolan's in a kiss that tasted of coffee and courage. Slow, deliberate, erasing the clumsiness of youth. It deepened, hands cupping faces, the world narrowing to breaths shared, hearts sinking like old mixtapes. But as they pulled apart, Nolan's phone lit up, 5 missed calls from Mia, a voicemail time-stamped 2:47 a.m. He played it, her voice cracking through static. Nolan, it's bad. Caleb found out about Ethan leaving. He's furious. Says it's your fault that you poisoned him years ago. Mom's hysterical, Dad's not speaking. Please call me. We need you. The bubble burst, reality's chill seeping in. Nolan's eyes met Ethan's, the weight of family fractures settling like dew. It's starting, he said softly. The fallout. Ethan squeezed his hand. Then we face it together. No more running. They stepped into the lot as the rain eased to mist, the pickup's cab a cocoon against the coming storm. Nolan directed Ethan to his apartment, the drive a blur of wet streets and what-ifs. Capitol Hill stirred. Joggers in neon, food carts firing up bacon sizzle. Inside Nolan's place, they collapsed on the couch, exhaustion claiming them in tangled limbs, the crumpled note a footnote on the floor. Morning brought coffee and clarity, but also the knock, insistent, echoing through the hall. Nolan opened the door to Mia, soaked and red-eyed, duffel at her feet. I drove all night, she gasped. Caleb's disowning you both, but I couldn't stay there. Not without my brothers. In that moment, as Ethan stirred behind him, Nolan pulled her inside, the door clicking shut on the old world. The new one? It would be messy, forged in rain and redemption, but for the first time, it felt like home. Mia's arrival cracked open the fragile peace like a fault line under the Cascades. tremors rippling through Nolan's apartment as the three of them huddled around the kitchen table. A scarred oak slab salvaged from a Capitol Hill flea market. Steam rose from mismatched mugs of drip coffee, the machine gurgling like a reluctant witness. Outside, Seattle's Saturday market buzzed faintly through the window. Farmers hawking heirloom tomatoes, buskers strumming covers of Elliott Smith, the city's pulse indifferent to personal earthquakes. Mia Harper, 24 and fierce as the river that shaped their childhood, clutched her mug like a lifeline. Her blonde hair, usually pinned in practical braids for vet school rotations, hung limp from the drive, framing a face puffy from tears and too little sleep. "Caleb's lost it," she said, voice raw. After Ethan's call to Sarah, word spread like wildfire. By midnight, the whole rehearsal crowd knew. The whispers turned to shouts. Mom collapsed in the church aisle. Dad just stared at the altar like God had personally betrayed him. Ethan winced, shoulders hunching under his borrowed hoodie. Nolan's, too small across the chest. "I didn't mean to torch everything. Sarah deserved better than my half-truths. Better than a groom who runs off to chase a ghost?" Mia shot back, but her eyes softened, flicking to Nolan with a mix of apology and ache. "Not you, Nol. Never you. Caleb's always been the protector, the one who fixed fences when Dad's temper snapped them. Now he's lashing out, saying you lured Ethan away to spite the family. That being gay is a choice you made to ruin us." Nolan's laugh was hollow, echoing off the exposed brick walls. Classic deflection. Blame the queer kid for the straight world's cracks. He pushed back from the table, pacing to the window where the Space Needle pierced the low clouds like a defiant needle. Below, couples strolled hand in hand toward California Anderson Park, rainbows literal in the puddles. His reflection stared back, hazel eyes shadowed, jaw set in the stubborn line he'd inherited from Dad. The morning unfolded in fragments. Mia raiding Nolan's fridge for eggs and toast, scrambling them with the efficiency of someone who'd dissected cadavers in vet school. Ethan scrolling his phone, deleting voicemails from furious friends, his face a mask of quiet devastation. Nolan booted up his laptop, emails from work piling up like unanswered prayers, but focus eluded him. Instead, he pulled up old photos, digital ghosts from a shared Google Drive. The three Harper siblings at Mia's high school graduation, Ethan photobombing with a goofy grin. A Bend bonfire where Caleb arm-wrestled locals, Nolan sketching flames in the dirt. "We can't just hide here," Mia said finally, plate pushed aside. "Caleb's calling the shots now. Says if Ethan doesn't turn around and marry Sarah, he's cutting ties. With all of us. The store's on the line. Those conservative ranchers won't buy feed from a sodomite sympathizer." Ethan's fork clattered. "Let him. I've got the shop or what's left after Dad's loans. But you too, Mia, your clinic placement in Portland? Nolan, this life you've built." Mia reached across, squeezing his wrist. "Portland's got more rainbows than Bend ever will. And Nol? He's survived worse." Her gaze on Nolan held the weight of shared secrets. The night after his coming out, when she'd snuck into his room with contraband Ben and Jerry's, whispering, "Love's not a sin, it's a superpower." Nolan nodded, throat tight. "We fight smart. No grand gestures yet. Give it a day for the dust to settle." But inside, doubt churned. Years of therapy in Seattle group sessions had taught him that family wounds fester deepest when ignored. They ventured out mid-afternoon, the rain a fine mist that beaded on their jackets like reluctant jewels. Capitol Hill streets thrummed with weekend energy. Tattoo parlors spilling ink-scented air, bookstores stacked with queer lit from Audre Lorde to Ocean Vuong. Mia's eyes widened at a vintage shop window displaying leather harnesses next to flannel shirts. Is this what liberation looks like? While Ethan trailed, his hand brushing Nolan's in the crowd, a tentative anchor. They ended at a brewpub on Pike Street, the kind with communal tables and flights of hazy IPAs that tasted like pine and possibility. Over pretzels and pale Alesh, conversation turned confessional. Mia admitted her own cracks, dating a woman in vet school, hiding it from home like a guilty pleasure. Thought if I played straight-laced little sister, it'd balance out your deviance, she air-quoted, wincing. Ethan shared shop stories. The closeted ranch hand who'd fixed his transmission last month. Eyes lingering too long on Ethan's grease-streaked arms. Nolan listened, the beer's warmth loosening the knots in his chest. "Remember the summer we built that treehouse?" he asked, voice low. "Caleb bossing the hammer, you and me sneaking nails from Dad's shed. We called it Fort Harper, impregnable against the world." Ethan's smile was soft, nostalgic. "Yeah, until the branch snapped and we all tumbled into the nettles. Laughed till we cried." Mia leaned in. "Build a new fort. Here. With us." But as the sun dipped, casting long shadows across the barswood floors, Nolan's phone vibrated. A video call from Caleb. He hesitated, then answered, propping it on the table. Caleb's face filled the screen, flushed and furious, the ranch's tack room in the background. Bridles dangling like nooses. "You happy now?" Caleb spat, voice tinny through the speaker. "Ethan's truck's gone from the drive. Sarah's locked in her room. Mom's popping Valium like candy. This is on you, Nolan. Always has been. Twisting him with your lifestyle." Ethan leaned into frame, calm as a still river. "It's on me, Caleb. I chose truth over the script. You gonna hate me for loving your brother?" Caleb's eyes narrowed, betrayal flashing like lightning. "Loving? Don't pretty it up. You're throwing away everything. Family, future. For a phase. Come back, Ethan. Fix this. Before I make calls to the bank, to your suppliers." The threat hung venomous. Mia snatched the phone. "Enough, Cal. We're family, not enemies. Nolan didn't force anyone. You did this. Shutting him out, pretending he doesn't exist." Caleb's laugh was brittle. "Family? He's the one who left. Ran to that Sodom by the Sound. Good riddance." Nolan ended the call, screen going dark like a slammed door. The pub's chatter swelled around them, a buffer against the silence. "He's bluffing," Nolan said, but his voice wavered. Caleb held the purse strings. Dad's will a tangled mess of trusts favoring the responsible son. Ethan's arm draped over Nolan's shoulders, solid and sure. "Then we untangle it. Together." Night fell as they walked back, arms linked against the chill. Mia crashed on the couch, snoring softly amid throw pillows. In the bedroom, Nolan and Ethan undressed by lamplight, bodies familiar yet new, scars from life's rough drafts mapping chests and thighs. They made love slow, exploratory. Ethan's mouth tracing Nolan's collarbone, hands reverent on hips, breaths mingling in the dark. It was reclamation. Kisses that healed old silences, touches that whispered, "Stay." After, tangled in sheets that smelled of laundry soap and sweat, Nolan traced Ethan's freckles. What if Caleb follows through? The shop, the land, it's all he's got. Ethan pulled him closer. "Then we start over. Mechanics need cities too. You, me, Mia. A garage in the hill, coding by day, fixing souls by night." Sleep came, but dawn brought escalation. A certified letter slipped under the door, from Harper Feeds Incorporated. Formal disinheritance notice for Nolan. Effective immediately. For conduct unbecoming, it read, Evelyn's notary stamp cold as judgment. Nolan's hands shook as he read it aloud, the words a blade twisting. Mia wept, Ethan paced like a caged wolf. But in the wreckage, a fire kindled, Nolan's eyes hardening to steel. They want war? We'll give them revolution. The day blurred into plans. Mia calling her Portland mentor for crash housing, Ethan scouting job boards for diesel techs, Nolan emailing his boss about remote work to cover the drive home. But under it, the crisis loomed. Caleb's betrayal, not just words, but ink on legal paper, severing blood ties with surgical precision. As evening deepened, Nolan stood on the fire escape, city lights a constellation of defiance. Ethan joined him, wrapping arms around from behind. "We're unbreakable now," he murmured into Nolan's neck. But Nolan knew better. True strength came from the breaking, the piecing back with gold-laced scars. The real storm was coming, and Bend waited like a reckoning. The drive south from Seattle hugged I-5 like a vein pulsing with reluctant blood. the Cascades rising on the left in jagged greens while the valley unfolded flat and fertile on the right. Nolan gripped the wheel of his Subaru, knuckles pale against the black. The engines hum a monotonous dirge under the podcast droning about queer icons in American history. Harvey Milk's defiance. Larry Kramer's rage. Ethan rode shotgun, map app open on his phone. Detours plotted to avoid Ben's prying eyes. Mia sprawled in the back, knees to chest, scrolling vet forums for solidarity stories that tasted like bitter medicine. They'd left at dawn, 2 days after the letter, after a night of fractured sleep and dawn patrols of coffee shops for last-minute allies. Nolan's boss had approved the family emergency leave with a sympathetic nod. Seattle's tech scene prided itself on progressive veneers, but he'd seen the side eyes when he mentioned Oregon roots. Ethan's truck stayed parked, a hostage to fate, keys handed to a neutral buddy in Capitol Hill for safekeeping. "Turn left at the next exit," Ethan said, voice steady but laced with gravel. Backroad to Sisters. Less traffic, more trees. The town of Sisters, with its quilt festivals and cowboy poetry, was a buffer, a place to regroup before the Harper Ranch loomed like a colossus. Nolan nodded, flicking the blinker. The podcast shifted to a story of reunion after rejection. A son reclaiming his birthright through therapy marathons and mediated apologies. "Think that's us?" he asked, half joking, eyes on the rearview where Mia's reflection showed quiet resolve. She leaned forward, chin on the seatback. "Maybe, but Caleb's not there yet. He's hurt, Nall. Feels like Ethan's betrayal is yours by proxy. Remember when he punched that bully for calling you fairy in 8th grade? Swore he'd always protect us." Ethan snorted softly. "Yeah, until protecting the family image meant protecting the lie." The miles ticked by, firs blurring into a verdant tunnel. They stopped at a roadside stand in Sandy, Oregon, fresh marionberries and elk jerky. The vendor a grizzled vet with a rainbow sticker on his cooler. "Safe travels," the man said, handing over change with a knowing wink. Small mercies in the wilderness. By noon, the landscape shifted. Arid plateaus dusted with sage, the Deschutes carving silver through basalt cliffs. Nostalgia clawed at Nolan. Bike rides along these banks, skipping rocks with Ethan while Caleb fished for trout. Now the river seemed accusatory, its flow a reminder of paths diverged. They checked into a no-frills motel on Ben's outskirts, the kind with vibrating beds and vending machines stocked with off-brand sodas. Room 7, 2 queens, a coffee pot that spat brown sludge, walls papered in faded florals. Mia claimed the shower first, emerging in borrowed sweats, hair turbaned in a towel. "Plan?" she asked, flopping onto the bedspread that smelled of mothballs. "Recon," Nolan said, spreading a napkin map. "Drive by the ranch at dusk. See the lay of the land. No contact yet. Gauge the temperature." Ethan paced the shag carpet, boots scuffing. "And if Dad's there, front porch with his shotgun stories? Or Mom, baking pies laced with guilt?" "We adapt," Mia said, ever the clinician. Like triaging a multi-car pileup. Dusk painted the sky in bruised purples as they rolled past the Harper spread. 3,000 acres of alfalfa and Angus. The sign at the gate weathered but proud. Harper feeds since 1952. White fences gleamed under security lights. The big house's wraparound porch strung with fairy lights for the wedding that never was. Tents sagged in the side yard, chairs stacked like surrendered soldiers. No cars in the drive, but smoke curled from the chimney, a signal of life within. Nolan slowed, engine idling. Looks abandoned, like the party's ghost lingered. Ethan's face pressed to the window, breath fogging glass. "That's Mom's station wagon, tucked by the barn. She's in there, holding fort." A figure emerged then. Caleb, silhouette broad against the lit door, phone to ear, pacing the gravel. He turned as if sensing them, eyes narrowing in the twilight. No wave, just a stare that pierced the distance, heavy with unspoken indictments. "Go," Mia urged, and Nolan accelerated, heart hammering. Back at the motel, they ordered pizza from a place called Big Bend Bites, pepperoni and pineapple, a Harper sibling tradition, and ate cross-legged on the floor, box between them like a peace treaty. Talk turned to the elephant. Confrontation. Tomorrow, Ethan said, wiping sauce from his chin. I face Sarah first, apologize proper, face to face. Then your folks. Nolan nodded, but sleep evaded him that night, the thin walls amplifying Ethan's snores and Mia's restless sighs. He slipped out to the parking lot, stars sharp overhead, the motel's neon sign buzzing like doubts. His phone lit with a text from Lena. Holding the fort. Kick-ass Harper. Simple solidarity. A tether to Seattle's embrace. Morning brought clarity and catastrophe. Ethan borrowed the Subaru for his errand, leaving Nolan and Mia to hike Pilot Butte. Ben's extinct volcano. Trails winding to a summit overlook where the town's patchwork sprawled below. They crested sweating, wind whipping, the view a bomb. River snaking silver, pines clawing skyward. Remember chasing each other up here? Mia panted, hands on knees. Caleb always won, but you'd trip him with vines. Nolan grinned faintly. Payback for hogging the rope swing. They sat on a bench etched with lovers' initials, sharing a water bottle, the world small from this height. Her voice dropped. I came out to Mom last month, in whispers over tea. She said nothing, just stirred sugar until it dissolved. Nolan's arm around her shoulders. Brave, more than I was. Down below, sirens wailed, fire trucks racing toward the industrial park. Mia checked her phone, paling. Ethan's shop. Flames reported. Arson suspected. They raced down, Nolan's quads burning. Dialing Ethan, no answer. The Subaru waited, keys frantic in ignition. Smoke plumed black as they neared Riley Auto, the acrid bite stinging eyes. Firefighters battled blazes, licking the garage bays, hoses snaking across lots. Caleb's truck idled curbside, him shouting orders to volunteers, face smeared with soot. Ethan emerged from the chaos, singed jacket over arm, eyes wild. Electrical, they say, but the timing. He trailed off as Caleb spotted them, striding over like a storm front. You did this. Caleb snarled at Ethan, jabbing a finger. Torch your own place to play martyr? Easy. Nolan stepped between, voice low thunder. You threatening now? After the letter, this. Caleb's laugh was jagged. Threats? This is consequence. Folks talk, say you're corrupting him. One match and poof, your fairy tale burns. Mia's gasp cut sharp. Caleb James Harper, that's enough. Jealousy's ugly on you. He whirled on her. Jealous? Of what? Your prodigal parade. Dad's dying in there. Lungs full of regret. And you're all playing house in Seattle. The words landed like shrapnel. Dad's heart failing faster. Hospice whispers Mia had omitted. Nolan reeled. Betrayal's fresh cut. You knew. And said nothing? Caleb's eyes flickered, guilt, then steel. Didn't want to drag you back. But now? Stay away. All of you. He stormed off, leaving ash in the air. Ethan pulled Nolan close, soot-streaked embrace. He's lashing because he loves us. Twisted, but true. Mia wiped tears. Or hates himself. For choices he can't make. They salvaged what they could, tools, ledgers, loading the Subaru till it sagged. Back at the motel, exhaustion crashed. Showers scalding clean, pizza remnants for dinner. Night deepened, body spent. But Nolan lay awake, Ethan's head on his chest, heartbeat a lullaby. Caleb scared, Ethan murmured into darkness. Of losing the legacy. But legacies change. Nolan kissed his temple. So do we. Dawn broke with a knock. Sarah, tentative on the threshold, pie in hands. Apple, from my grandma's recipe. Can we talk? The door opened wider, inviting the prodigal in. Forgiveness's first thread, fragile but weaving. Sarah's pie steamed on the motel's rickety table, cinnamon crust flaking like autumn leaves, a peace offering in a war zone of emotions. She sat primly on the bed's edge, sundress smoothed over knees, her dark curls tamed in a ponytail that did little to hide the puffiness around her eyes. At 27, she carried the pastor's daughter poise, straight-backed, soft-spoken. But cracks showed in the tremor of her hands, the way she twisted a paper napkin to shreds. Ethan knelt before her, voice gravel rough from smoke inhalation. Sarah, I am so damn sorry. For the hurt, the humiliation. You deserved a partner who saw your light, not borrowed it to hide his shadows. She met his gaze, steady as the river she'd grown up fishing. I knew, Ethan. Not the details, but the distance. Nights you'd stare at the ceiling, whispering names I didn't recognize. Pause, napkin confetti scattering. Nolan's, I bet. Nolan shifted in the armchair, feeling exposed. The room's air thick with unsaid histories. Mia hovered by the door, a sentinel in yoga pants, ready to mediate or mediate out. Sarah's laugh was soft, watery. Library perks, tons of queer memoirs on the shelves. I read them after our first fight, wondering if that's what kept you walled off. Thought maybe prayer would fix it. Turns out, love's not a plot twist you pray away. Ethan's hand reached for hers, tentative. You're not broken for loving me, and I'm not for this. She squeezed back, tears spilling. Then go be free, but bend. It's small. Whispers turned to stones. The conversation stretched, pie divvied into uneven slices, sweet tang cutting the bitterness. Sarah shared wedding fallout. Her parents' silent treatment, church ladies clucking pity, but also quiet allies. A cousin who'd come out years back, slipping her a card for a Portland support group. You're not alone, she said, standing to hug Ethan. Then Nolan, her embrace fierce. Fix your family, boys, before the river claims what's left. She left with the empty dish, a weight lifted but echoes lingering. Nolan watched her taillights fade, the motel lot a stage for partings. She's stronger than any of us, he murmured. Mia nodded. Grace in the wreckage. Now the ranch. They drove at midday, sun high and unforgiving, casting harsh shadows on the Subaru's dash. The gate creaked open under Nolan's push, gravel crunching like bones under tires. The house loomed, Victorian bones wrapped in cedar siding, porch swing swaying empty. Dad's truck sat rusted by the barn, a relic. Evelyn answered the door, apron dusted with flour, face a mask of weary steel. You came. No warmth but no bolt either. Behind her, the living room smelled of pot roast and antiseptic. Dad in his recliner, oxygen mask hissing, eyes distant as the horizon. Mia rushed to him, kneeling. Daddy! He stirred, hand frail on her cheek, murmuring her name like a prayer. Nolan hung back, Ethan at his side, the threshold a chasm. Evelyn's gaze flicked over them, judgment in the purse of lips. Caleb's at the store, said not to expect him. We'll wait, Nolan said, stepping in, air thick with history. The afternoon dragged. Small talk over iced tea, Evelyn's hands fluttering like trapped birds. Dad wheezed stories, war tales from Korea, ranch winters that tested souls. Ethan helped in the kitchen, chopping carrots with mechanic's precision, drawing Evelyn into talk of recipes swapped with his mom. But tension simmered. As sun slanted golden, Caleb's truck roared up, dust plume announcing him. He burst in, eyes blazing. Out. Now. Directed at Ethan but sweeping all. Cal? Mia started, but Dad's cough cut sharp, a rattle that silenced the room. Caleb deflated, kneeling by the chair. Dad needs rest. Not this circus. Evelyn stood. Enough, son. They've come home. Her voice cracked. First fracture. Dinner was a battlefield. Roast carved uneven, potatoes mashed lumpy. Silence broken by probes, Caleb's barbs about Seattle dens of iniquity, Nolan's retorts on chosen kin. Ethan mediated, sharing shop loss, the fire's suspicious timing. You think I did that? Caleb exploded, fork clattering. Set fire to a man's livelihood? For what? Bible points. Dad's voice, weak but iron. Son. Lies burn hotter than matches. Caleb recoiled, face ashen. Dad. The room held breath. Nolan spoke, voice steady. We're not here to conquer, just to heal. Or try. Post-dinner, Dad beckoned Nolan to the porch, oxygen tank wheezing in tow. Stars wheeled overhead, crickets chorusing. Missed you, boy. Rough hand on Nolan's. Thought silence protected. Wrong. Tears pricked. Me too, Dad. Inside, Caleb cornered Ethan in the hall. Why him? Why now? Ethan's reply low. Because he's home. Always was. Night fell. Siblings bunked in old rooms. Nolan's posters faded. Baseball mitt still glove-boxed. Ethan on the couch, a gentleman exile. Sleep evaded. Whispers through walls. Mia consoling Caleb in the kitchen. Sobs muffled by midnight. Dawn brought crisis. Dad's fever spiking. Ambulance lights strobing the drive. Hospital in Bend. Sterile halls. Beeping monitors. Family clustered in waiting. Evelyn praying rosary beads. Caleb pacing. Mia charting vitals like a pro. Doctor's words. Pneumonia complicating the CHF. Touch and go. Vigil stretched, coffee from vending machines, vending regrets. Caleb pulled Nolan aside in the chapel. Fluorescent saints watching. If he goes, it's on us. The fighting. Nolan nodded, bridge building. Truce. Handclasp. Tentative. Truce. Dad stabilized by noon. Color returning. Gruff jokes about hospital jello. Discharge planned, but the scare lingered, a catalyst. Back at the ranch, unpacking became metaphor. Mia airing linens, Ethan fixing the porch step, Nolan and Caleb mending fence wire under merciless sun. Remember the fire? Caleb grunted, twisting pliers. Not me, but I heard talk. Some old client, mad about the wedding gossip. Nolan snipped barbs. Fear makes monsters. Caleb paused, sweat beading. Scared of losing you. Again. Words hung, mending more than wire. Evening barbecue. Impromptu. Ribs on the grill, Sarah joining with coleslaw, her presence a bomb. Laughter crept in. Stories of childhood pranks. Ethan's terrible prom date tales. But under it, Nolan felt the pull, Seattle calling, work emails pinging. As fireflies danced, he and Ethan slipped to the riverbank. Water murmuring secrets. Stay, Ethan asked, hand in hand. Nolan leaned into him. For now. For this. Kiss under cottonwoods. River witness. But dawn brought Dad's collapse, code blue in the night. The real breaking, forcing truths to surface or drown. The hospital's cardiac wing hummed with mechanical insistence. Ventilators sighing like weary ants. For pumps beeping metronomic warnings. Nolan slumped in the vinyl visitor chair, elbows on knees, staring at the linoleum tiles scuffed by 1,000 anxious souls. Dad's room lay beyond the sliding glass. A tableau of tubes and monitors framing the man who'd once wrestled steers barehanded. Now, Harold Harper breathed shallow, sedated haze dulling the fire in his eyes. It was 4 a.m., the witching hour when confessions clawed free. Caleb paced the hall, phone clutched like a talisman, ignoring calls from store clerks wondering about shipments delayed by drama. Mia dozed fitfully on a love seat, scrubs borrowed from a nurse friend, her hand twitching as if palpating phantom pulses. Evelyn sat vigil inside, rosary clicking soft as rain on tin. Ethan slipped Nolan a styrofoam coffee, fingers brushing, a lifeline in the fluorescent glare. Heard the doc, stable but weak. Family meeting at 8. Nolan sipped, bitter sludge mirroring his gut. Stable's a lie we tell ourselves. He's slipping, and we're fracturing around him. Ethan sank beside him, shoulder solid. Then we shore up. No more half measures. Dawn crept through slatted blinds, painting stripes on the carpet. At 8 sharp, the team assembled, white coats murmuring end-stage heart failure, options from palliative to aggressive. Evelyn's nod was resolute, comfort care, home hospice. He'd want the river view, not this cage. Discharge choreography. Ambulance to the ranch, hospital bed in the living room, oxygen concentrators humming like guardians. Caleb drove the lead vehicle, Nolan trailing with Ethan and Mia, the convoy a funeral procession in reverse. Homecoming was hushed. Dad wheeled to the window overlooking pastures, where cows grazed oblivious. Smells like freedom, he rasped, hand waving off pity. Days blurred into caregiving rhythm. Nolan on mornings, brewing decaf and reading sports pages aloud. Mia afternoons, meds and vitals with vet's precision. Evenings Caleb's, stoic feeds and stories of glory days. Ethan integrated seamless. Fence checks, meal preps, his presence a quiet revolution. Evelyn's initial stiffness thawing over shared pie recipes. But undercurrents swirled. Nolan caught Caleb watching them. Him and Ethan, hands lingering on dish towels, glances held too long. One twilight, as Nolan pushed Dad's chair to the porch, Caleb cornered him by the hydrangeas. "Does it have to be so obvious?" Caleb muttered, voice low. "Dad's time is short. Spare him the show." Nolan's temper flared, hot as forge. "Obvious? Like your disinheritance papers? Or the fire that conveniently gutted Ethan's life?" Caleb flushed. "That wasn't... I told you it was some bigot client. I shut him down, threatened to pull accounts. Too little, too late." Nolan stepped closer, hazel eyes locking. "You betrayed me first, Cal. Banning me from your wedding, like my love's contagious poison." Caleb's shoulders sagged, the quarterback's armor cracking. "I was scared. Of Dad's legacy crumbling, of Mom's heart breaking again after her sister. You know, the one who left for San Francisco and never called. A beat. Thought if I kept you at arm's length, it'd protect us all." Nolan's anger ebbed, replaced by ache. "Protection's a two-way street. I needed my brother, not a judge." They stood, wind rustling leaves, the silence a bridge. Caleb extended a hand, not clasp, but shoulder grip, old football huddle style. "I'm trying, Null. For Dad. For you." Inside, the crisis crested that night. Dad's breathing labored, pain spiking through morphine fog. Family gathered, hands linked in a circle around the bed. Evelyn's prayers murmured, Mia's tears silent. Caleb's jaw clenched, Nolan and Ethan anchoring ends. Dad rallied enough for words. Voice a whisper carried on effort. "Boys," he rasped, eyes fluttering to Nolan and Ethan. "Life's too short for closets. Loved you both. Always knew." A cough, then to Caleb. "Son, forgive, or you'll carry it alone." Caleb broke first, sob-wrenching free, collapsing to knees. "Dad, shoo." Hand on head, benediction. Proud. Of all. Harold Harper slipped away at 2:17 a.m., monitors flatlining to elegy. The room held breath, then shattered. Evelyn's wail. Mia's collapse into Nolan's arms. Caleb's fists pounding mattress in futile rage. Ethan pulled strings, calling the hospice nurse, handling paperwork with mechanic's calm. Funeral loomed. Small service at the Episcopal, burial in the family plot by the river. Preparations wove grief's tapestry. Obits drafted. Casseroles arriving from neighbors who'd whispered but now offered forks. Sarah organized flowers, her quiet strength a buoy. Nolan wandered the ranch alone at dawn. Boots sinking in dew-kissed grass. River murmuring condolences. Ethan found him there, arms wrapping from behind. "He knew," Ethan said, "about us." Gave his blessing in that gruff way. Nolan turned, burying face in Ethan's neck, salt mingling with earth. "Lost without a map now. Then we draw one. Together." Caleb's thaw accelerated post-burial. Eulogy he'd written, voice cracking over Dad's love for all his children, no exceptions. At the graveside, under ponderosis shedding gold needles, he pulled Nolan aside. "The letter void. Stores yours too, half-share. If you want it." Nolan searched his face. Sincerity in the lines. "Maybe part-time. Seattle's home base. But yeah, half." Brotherly clasp, real this time. Evelyn's healing was slower, rosary beads clicking less frantically. One evening, over pot roast redux, she set a plate before Ethan. "Tell me about Seattle. The real parts, not the rumors." He did rainy runs, faux nights, Nolan's coding triumphs. Her questions probed gentle. "And you too? Happy?" Ethan's nod firm. "Happier than hidden." She reached across, patting his hand. "Then that's enough." Mia's departure tugged next. Portland calling for rotations. but promises of weekends. New fort's got room, she hugged, duffel slung. Caleb's crisis peaked alone. A bender at the water wheel, Ben's dive bar, where locals nursed micros and grudges. Nolan fetched him at midnight, slumped over pool table, cue chalk-dusted fingers. Can't do it without you, Caleb slurred. The weight. Nolan drove him home, sobering with black coffee. Dawn confessions. Caleb's own doubts. Marriage jitters pre-wedding crash. Attractions glimpsed but buried. Not like you, but questions. Nolan listened, no judgment. Questions are start. Answers come. By week's end, fractures mended tentative. Family dinner sans dad's chair, but with stories filling void. Ethan scouted rebuild sites near Bend, hybrid life brewing, weak split between ranch and city. Yet Nolan's heart crisis brewed internal. Seattle's pull versus roots reclaimed. One night, packing for return, he found Dad's old journal in the attic. Entries yellowed, admitting fears for Nolan's safety in that liberal mess. Prayers for strength to love unconditional. Tears blurred ink. Ethan found him there, dust motes dancing. We go back stronger. Or stay, build here. Nolan closed the book. Both. The river flows both ways. Departure dawned crisp. Subaru loaded with heirlooms. Dad's watch, Mom's quilt. Hugs lingered. Evelyn's fierce, Caleb's backslapping, Mia's via video from the road. Highway north, Ethan's hand on Nolan's thigh, radio crooning indie folk about homecomings. Crisis crested, but healing's tide rose. Humanity in the mess, love the truest legacy. The Subaru crested Snoqualmie Pass under a sky bruised with October clouds. The summit viewpoint pulling them over for a leg stretch amid wind-whipped pines and vending machine hot chocolate. Nolan leaned on the hood, thermos steaming in hands, watching Ethan toss pebbles into the abyss. Each skip a small defiance against gravity's pull. Below, the Snoqualmie River threaded emerald through valleys, a silver echo of the Deschutes, binding their worlds in watery metaphor. Feels like crossing borders, Ethan said, zipping his jacket against the chill. Oregon to Washington, conservative dust to rainbow concrete. Nolan bumped his shoulder. Borders blur. We're proof. They'd left Bend with loose ends tied in lovers' knots. Caleb helming the store with Nolan's remote input, quarterly audits via Zoom. Evelyn packing care boxes of jerky and jam, letters tucked inside with psalms softened by love, mom. Sarah starting a book club for stories of becoming. Her invite extended to all. Mia's texts pinged hourly. Portland adventures. A girlfriend named Riley with a laugh like wind chimes. Seattle welcomed with drizzle kiss. Capitol Hill streets slick as promises. The apartment felt fuller. Ethan's duffel in the corner. Tools scattered on the coffee table like settled roots. Work resumed. Nolan debugging code for an app connecting rural queers to urban mentors. Irony not lost. Ethan interviewing at a hybrid garage in Fremont, specializing in electric conversions for eco-ranchers. But reintegration chafed. Nolan's runs along the trail now carried Ben's ghosts. Dad's rasp in the wind, Caleb's truce handshake warm in memory. Nights, Ethan stirred from nightmares of flames, waking to Nolan's murmurs, bodies seeking solace in familiar curves. Crisis lingered in subtleties. A work happy hour where colleagues probed family drama with pitying tilts. Ethan's hesitation at a pride afterparty. Ben's shadows making Seattle's glitter feel performative. Nolan felt it too. The pull of reclaimed blood versus chosen city's embrace. A heart divided like continental drift. Climax brewed mid-November. Thanksgiving looming. Caleb called, "Come home." Full table. Mom's turkey, my apology pie. Nolan hesitated, phone hot against ear. Us? Both. Both, Caleb affirmed. Dad's spot empty, but we'd fill it with us. Ethan, eavesdropping from the kitchen, nodded fierce. We go. Close the circle. Road trip south. Subaru stuffed with pies from a Capitol Hill bakery. Podcasts on forgiveness swapped for audiobooks of queer families thriving. Bend greeted with frost-rimed fields. The ranch house aglow, windows steaming welcome. Table set bountiful. Turkey golden, cranberry relish tart, Evelyn's rolls featherlight. Sarah arrived with wine, Mia with Riley, redhead firecracker who charmed with vet tails. Caleb carved, hand steady, first slice to Nolan. To Sakans. Toast circled. Evelyn's to Harold's legacy of quiet strength. Mia's to sisters by choice. Sarah's to unworn veils. Ethan's to truths that set us free. Caleb's eyes met Nolan's. To brothers, blood and otherwise. Laughter flowed freer than wine, stories tumbling. Ethan's botched proposal speech, now punchline. Nolan's Seattle hookup horror, defanged in retelling. But under it, vulnerability simmered. Evelyn's confession over pie, voice quaver. Feared losing you to the city, lost you to my fear instead. Nolan covered her hand. Found each other now. Post-feast, menfolk to the barn, beers cracked. Ethan's rebuild sketches unrolled on hay bales. Caleb traced lines. Partner? Half the shop, your designs. Ethan grinned. Deal. Electric Harpers. Nolan watched, chest full, brothers bridging, not breaking. Return north carried momentum. Joint bank accounts, weekend drives south. Ethan's Fremont job sealing hybrid life. Christmas in Bend, tree strung with dad's ornaments, gifts practical. Nolan a coding boot camp voucher for Caleb's kid someday. Evelyn a Seattle spa day, her first rainbow scarf tentative. But Nolan's internal storm peaked New Year's. Alone in the apartment, Ethan at a late shift, rain lashing windows like accusations. Journal open to dad's words, doubt flooded. Had healing been glossed or genuine? A call to Mia, feel like imposter. Gay son playing straight family. Her voice anchor, you're humanizing them. That's the gift. Ethan home by midnight, sensing fracture. Talk. Words poured. Fears of relapse, of love's fragility. Ethan listened, then pulled a box, small velvet. Inside, rings, simple tungsten, etched with river waves. Not proposal, promise. We build, break, rebuild. Together. Nolan slipped his on, cool band warming to skin. Kiss that sealed, deep anchoring. Spring bloomed reconciliation. Joint trip to the fair. Ferris will ride. Ethan and Nolan at top, world sprawling. Up and away. Ethan whispered, hand laced. Always, Nolan replied. Caleb's wedding redo. Small, summer solstice. Sarah's cousin. A quiet ceremony by the river, Nolan best man. Vows exchanged under cottonwoods. Nolan's toast. To love that bends, but never breaks. Evelyn danced with Ethan. Steps tentative, smile genuine. Mia officiated Riley's surprise proposal, family cheering. Nolan's healing crested in therapy, group in Seattle sharing scars. Family's not perfect, he told the circle. But forgiveness? It's the humanity we owe ourselves. Years folded. Ethan's shop thrived, electric rigs humming. Nolan's app scaled, connecting hearts across divides. Kids came. Adopted twins, biracial whirlwinds named after rivers. Deschutes and Duwamish. Bend visits ritual. Bonfires, Caleb's stories to nephews of uncle's adventures. Evelyn's letters evolved, psalms paired with pride pins. One autumn eve, Nolan and Ethan on the apartment fire escape. City lights winking. Worth the banishment? Ethan asked, head on shoulder. Nolan kissed temple. Banishment forged us. Families the return.